One power means it is a way of life. This talk, it asks us to look at managing our fears about the world we live in. It asks the question, really, how do we operate from our divine knowing as we watch things that are going on in our world? We just saw the election of our leaders and the riots at the Capitol building in D.C. Well, you know me, I want us to live our lives with spiritual truth that we apply to whatever the situation is that we're faced with. So I think it's a timely topic for us to have this discussion. And I hope you feel the same way too. Often, as human beings, we compartmentalize our lives. You know, when we are in church or doing spiritual things like prayer, meditation, retreats, we often remember to act from our divine knowing. So that's a plus. And this knowing is that there is only one presence and one power in the universe, God, the good omnipotent. What is sometimes interesting is that we forget this truth when we are in our fears. And hear that there's no judgment around that. That's part of being human. And we can have lots of fears. It can be the fear of not having enough resources to survive, fear of not being enough, fear of not being loved or seen, fear of not being appreciated, fear of not being successful. It can even be the fear of institutions and organizations' power over our well-being. We have just gone through a really tumultuous time in the last year. Not only from dealing with one of the deadliest viruses of the century, but also from a harrowing election process. So I'm going to make this talk as experiential as possible. And I'm going to ask you to take a moment to remember what you felt during a few situations that we have all just gone through in our country together. Take a deep breath with me. And exhale. And I want you to remember what feelings arose within you when you heard that Trump refused to concede as the next president of the U.S. Now, he had his own perceptions, right? He believed that there was a possibility of election fraud. What feelings came up for you? Now take another deep breath. Exhale. And I want you to remember watching on the news the recent riots at the Capitol building in D.C. What were you feeling? Take another deep breath in. Exhale. And finally, remember what feelings came up as you found out that about 20% of the rioters in the Capitol were military or law enforcement personnel. Now take another deep breath in and exhale. There's a purpose of my asking you to remember your feelings. And that purpose is to get in touch with that underlying fear. Now, I don't know about you, but in each of these instances, I did have a moment of fear. With all of my spiritual work, with all of the clarity of my beliefs in oneness. I had that moment of fear. And we feel those fears because we followed what our brain thought about the meaning that those events would have on us. Our thoughts may be fed by the media, friends, family, co-workers, and of course our own beliefs. The fears of increased crime, fears of violence at the hands of others, fear of those who aren't like us, fear of the economy. We have those fears, and even when, in all those cases, the facts refute those fears, we still feel that fear. And here's where some of it comes from. There's been a maxim in the media industry that says, if it bleeds, it leads. And that has been the foundation for news reporting for decades. And here's the thing. News reporting is not about reporting the norm. No, news reporting is about reporting the abnormal, things that shock us. Things that make us afraid. And fear is a tactic used by politicians to create that knee-jerk reaction in us humans, to evoke an instinctual response. Now, this election has taken it to new levels. Some candidates are successful because fears are being answered by feeding the illusion. Even if it's an illusion, it's what some folks want to hear. And they pander to those who feel disenfranchised in their lives and desire to place blame on others. Now, there's this book that I love by an author that I love. It's called I Am the Word, and it's by Paul Selig. And he does what I consider channeling, and he's channeling ascended teachers. And this is what they tell us about our country right now. So I want to share that with you. So the ascended teachers say, this country right now is in a trial. And this trial is presenting itself as cultural magnification of everything that did not work for a very long time. This country right now is having to re-identify itself in its consciousness and therefore is in trial. Now, what this means is that our country is in the midst of transformation, and it feels really uncomfortable for many of us who don't know what it will look like. But we must continue in our awareness that whatever we put our energy in, whatever we put our focus on, will become larger. Whomever and whatever we vehemently resist, we are unconsciously giving it a lot of energy and feeding its power. What we know about the human body is that there is no logic once our amygdala has been hijacked. There is no God once we are emotionally hijacked. There is no oneness in the universal power of the divine once our nervous system is flooded with adrenaline. And we are in that process of fight, flight, or freeze. Now, as truth students and metaphysicians, we know that an awakening in consciousness requires that we look at what is hidden. We are being called to walk our talk and transform. And what I want to do is I want to share with you my process and how I dealt with this. When I initially felt that fear in each of the above circumstances where I asked you to breathe and feel, I use those feelings to be a witness of my humanity and my divinity, right? I gave myself permission to feel the fear from my humanness, from my humanity. And here's the thing. I didn't judge it. I didn't curse it. I didn't label it. No, I blessed myself with compassion as I felt those fears. Then I did the work of self-awareness and emotional intelligence. This stops me from being completely emotionally hijacked. I look at what thoughts am I having that made me feel afraid. Because if I'm having those feelings, if that fear is coming up, they are driven by the thoughts in my mind. I access those thoughts and I realize my thoughts were filled with what ifs. I don't know, this feeling of the unknown and powerlessness. I then trace those thoughts to what beliefs am I holding on to that are not of oneness. And I quickly discover my belief in I'm not powerful enough and I'm separate from others. I then realize these beliefs are not of God. They're not what I believe in. They're not of oneness. And then I make a choice to create new beliefs. And the beliefs that I chose to create, I am powerful and I have agency to create the life I want. Right? I reminded myself that whatever is going on is not really impacting where I am in the moment. I also chose to create a belief that says, as things change, I am adaptive and I thrive. Like, I also had this awakening. I realized that if I listened to the incorrect information as they did, guess what? I would be out there attempting to overthrow a corrupt government. And I saw myself as one step away from taking this action. You know what that did for me? It connects me to them, and I can embrace them with compassion. See, there's no separation in that moment. Now hear this. This doesn't mean that they aren't accountable for their behavior or that they are not responsible for questioning their own beliefs and making the necessary changes. No. You see, any time that you or I see each other as separate, we give permission for violence, injustice, and economic distress. So in each of these chaotic experiences, I'm saying to you, this is a time to embrace it because this is an opportunity for you to grow, to evolve, to become accountable for your consciousness and transform. In each of these experiences, we have the choice to be the expression of God in the world throughout whatever experiences we have the power to choose that there really is only one presence and one power in the universe, God, the good omnipotent. And how will we walk in the world with this knowing? So this is an invitation to you to allow yourself to be in this transformation right now as our country transforms to its highest good. I'm inviting you to create the world that really does work for all. And how we do that always starts with ourselves. So this week, I'm inviting you to look at the thoughts that come up. And if you're unable to look at the thoughts right away, go to the feelings. What am I feeling? Because you better believe if you're feeling something, you have a thought that is directly controlling your emotions. And then you can trace that back to what is the belief that you hold. So I'm seeing you as co-creators, my friends, during this time. And let's be for every person on this planet. Hold them in the knowing that they deserve prosperity. They deserve to be happy. They deserve to be fulfilled. I don't know about you, but that's the world I really want to create. Will you join me?